Hello everyone, I'm Andrew Canter. I'm the Global CEO of the Branded Content Marketing Association, or BCMA, who are the global community for branded content and influencer marketing. So thank you for joining us today for our BCMA Global Panel, which is all about delivering value with creativity. So just as an introduction, it's interesting to know, look, that across the world, we've collectively been experiencing a huge crisis, which hasn't discriminated. When so many business sectors have suffered as a result of COVID-19, marketing has been adversely affected. Budgets have been slashed as uncertainty has reigned. At the same time, for those who haven't withdrawn altogether, brand messaging has felt like a tightrope for most, bringing in huge challenge of striking the right tone whilst putting out compelling content. Any brand message that could be seen to be exploiting the current situation has been met with negative consumer sentiment that causes long-term damage to brand equity. And at the same time, many of the traditional ways of creating content, such as TV, have been severely restricted during this lockdown period. But several notable brands have pivoted to practically help, from manufacturing hand sanitizer to donating free or discounted food to health workers. These initiatives have been rightly applauded. But we're going to focus on which brands have gone further in a way that's likely to make a long-term positive impact. So we brought together a panel of experts from across the BCMA Global Professional Network to share their views on how brands and agencies, platforms and producers should adapt and emerge positively going forward. So I'm going to ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves, tell us what they do, what their work is for the BCMA, and then tell us something that we don't know about them. So I'm going to start with Roger.
Hi, Andrew. My name is Roger Casas-Alatriste. I am the representing here at BCMA Spain. I'm actually the Vice President of International Relationships. And I'm also the founder and owner of a company called El Cañonazo Transmedia, which translates like in the cannon shot, which is an agency / production company / studio, which means that we work in the brand and marketing world, but also in the let's say PR content world, making all sorts of different formats and working on different platforms, from animated GIFs to TV series. So it's a wide range of content that we do. And something that you don't know about me, yeah, you mentioned it before, is I play guitar. I used to play in a band when I was much younger, and actually one of my biggest goals was breaking a guitar on stage when I was 18 in front of 3,500 people.
Just like Jimi Hendrix.
Well, yeah, but without the lighter.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, that's great. And what about you, Margret?
Yeah, my name is Margret Knitter. I'm from Germany. I am a member of the BCMA in the DACH region. I'm a member of the board there. In my real life, I'm a lawyer with the law firm SKW Schwarz. We are a full-service law firm with around 130 lawyers. Our main focus is on the media and entertainment law, ITD, digital business. I do a lot of trademarks, everything with brand protection. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be on that panel, and I'm looking forward to that. And now the difficult question, what do you don't know about me? Well, maybe you don't know that I love the Oktoberfest, as you can see here. I don't know if that's a secret, but maybe for you guys. And I was very sad that we had no Oktoberfest this year, but we have to keep up the spirit.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Margret. And let's go to South Africa now, and let's hear from Spero.
Thank you, Andrew, and everybody on the panel. My name is Spero Patricios. I chair the South African chapter of the Branded Content Marketing Association, and I run a company called Launch Factory, which focuses on content. And if you look at content on a content continuum, short format to long format, we create and produce all of that across the African continent, all the way up to Nigeria. And something you don't know about me is that I'm of Greek origin and South African, living in the African continent, and I love cycling every day.
Wonderful. Keeping fit. That's great. And last but no means least, Julie.
Hello. So I am Julie Dardou from the content from the BCMA French Institute.
Chapter.
So I work to Marsa from 6 months. I'm very passionate by content marketing since a long time, because I start to create an MBA on content marketing 15 years ago in France. So I love that. So I'm very happy to share now the content perspective in a global way. So I'm very happy about that. And apart content marketing, I am very fan of regatta. I love sailing. So this is the reason I went in the south of France, not to become a champion, but just to try to drive a boat. So
very nice.
In the current period, it's necessary to be able to do that. Yeah.
Lovely. That's great. Thank you. It's lovely to hear your passions and what drives you. So I think, obviously we're all connected through our love of great branded content. As you know, we've just finished our global lockdown content showcase, which was a celebration really of creativity during the lockdown period, where we had over 50 campaigns that were voted for by BCMA members to look at how brands have kind of adapted through this very difficult and challenging time. But, we still must deliver that value to our clients and to the brands. So let's talk about how you as organizations deliver that value through creativity. I suppose really we should start with, what do we think that value is? When you talk about value, how are you returning that investment to brands? So maybe Roger, you want to start us off on that.
Yeah, I think that this particular situation that we're living right now, it just enhances or underlines the way that a brand should participate in the conversation, or or be part of our lives. We've been talking for a long time that brands should do relevant stuff, to tell relevant stories in order to become more friendly, or to be more suitable in our lives. And now in this particular critical times that we're living, I guess it has been much more obvious, and because you have brands that I guess in a way that they are a little bit like restrained, because they cannot talk about selling us stuff. But I see it in the other way. Maybe those brands should be think of themselves as liberated from that selling driver, and so that's I guess that's a great opportunity in order to become really, really relevant. We've in our particular case in the Cañonazo, we've done several content related to this. We work with one of the biggest, or if not the biggest, brand in Spain, which is El Corte Inglés, a huge retail store. And obviously all the shops are closed. And in the earliest days of the lockdown, they were thinking about let's advertise this, let's sell this. So we started doing relevant things for the people who were locked down in their places, from yoga exercises to cooking recipes to small stories for the kids, animated series and stuff, and it worked really well. Tomorrow we have one of the EFIs here in Spain, and we're in the shortlist of the. There's also a lockdown category at the EFIs this year, and we're finalists there. Because I guess it's a little bit a great but a little switch on the mentality of a brand. We've been working with the El Corte Inglés for several months or years, and now this has just been accelerated.
Yeah, so it's sort of adapting. You know, you're helping them to adapt, which I think is really interesting. What about you from South Africa, Spero? What have you seen over the last few months?
So I think creativity has become such a big play on brands, because if you look at what people are doing on TikTok, they are being so creative with such a little, and it doesn't really have to be this big production value with big cameras and big lights. It's actually on a small camera, but what counts and what's going to get you to cut through the clutter is being creative. And when you wrote that question, I said, you know, creativity, it's I suppose it's such an important part of our industry. I did a little bit of research and I found something quite interesting. So if you think about creativity, I suppose most of us can remember a piece of content or an ad that's funny or clever or thoughtful or emotional. So there's no doubt that creativity can delight and inspire us. But the question was, can we generate value? So I did a little bit of research and I found this article that said the short answer is yes. And I found a thing that was written by McKinsey. And what McKinsey did is they said to quantify and measure creativity, what are they going to do? They're going to examine creativity and they're going to develop what they called an ACS. It's an award creative score, which is an index that took the ACS index and they measured brands that had consistently achieved over a 15-year period. So it was quite long.
Yeah.
And then they measured the results according to the creativity and the awards they had won. And they worked out scientifically, I suppose in their own little way, does creativity work in our industry? And the short answer was it does.
Yeah.
And so I think we've got to look at how creative we can be, and you can get inspiration from TikTok. So that's what we're doing. We're looking at what these content creators are doing and applying it to our brands in certain ways, you know. So not exactly TikTok, but just applying some of those creative rules in the content that we're producing.
Yeah, and that's a great point. I mean, you know, to me, necessity is the mother of invention. You know, the fact is when you have to do something, it pushes you to do that. And that's why I always say, you know, regulation is a good thing because it makes us even more creative when we push the boundaries. So, Julie, from your perspective, you know, from the brand, what are you seeing in terms of, you know, the creativity of your discussions with your teams?
I just start the point because for me the lockdown allows something very special about creativity. It's the first time I think we have the opportunity to align corporate purpose and consumer campaign. In reality, we are always trying to find the good moments to talk about product, to talk about purpose, to talk about corporate engagement. And I think for the first time, I see that a lot of departments work together and were aligned about the main message to deliver during this period. Not only for a kind of a key message with many proof, but I think all the brand I can see, and my brand also at Rechtsanwälte, we're just obsessed about the necessity for us, for example, for the wellness of cats and dogs. It was very important to adapt this message first before all the activation on things. It was just to reassure about that. And I think that creativity, in fact, value of creativity has changed on 4 points because lockdown has created, has forced, in fact, to open new channels for brands, and not just good for consumer, but a good way, for example, to spread a Zoom meeting for sport brands, to have one-to-one message through WhatsApp, for example. So it helps people to go beyond the comfort zone. So I think it was a good exercise for the brand and for the creativity. The new things also, the second point also was a new tone of voice used. The necessity of changing of tone of voice because the period forced also not to be just entertainer, just to have a more serious tone of voice. Sometimes it could be beyond, but I think a lot of brands leave the entertain tone of voice to go something on more rational, on more important and necessity. So I think it maybe the period become more serious for some of them. And after also, I think the lockdown has allowed to have a new type of engagement with a new periodicity. Not engagement like we have on social media, but a real engagement, long-term new KPIs on that, in fact, because I think if you have been very sensitive or touched by a brand during the COVID, if it has give really useful information or things, I think it's a kind of a long-term prospective relationship. And I think we reinvent the term engagement, because I think engagement KPI was very focused with social media, Facebook and things. And now I think engagement is become something much more adapt for purpose adoption.
Okay, that's really interesting. Thank you. And Margret, what about from your perspective, from your markets and your experience? What are you seeing as the sort of the issues that are coming out
right
during this time?
Yeah, I think I would like to refer to a good example where I find that they did it really well, delivering value through creativity. I don't know if you have heard it. It was on the German YouTube channel called Utopia. It just ran in October. I don't know if you heard about that. Apparently, it was the most successful event for YouTube in Germany now. So what they did is they put really big known influencers, German influencers together for, I think, 5 days. They lived all together in a dome, and it was like broadcast all the time. It was they also put it on their influencer channels. Then they had special guests which came into, and what they talked about was the pressing issue about climate change. So they had signs there, and it was all for young people, of course, Fridays for Future. So I think they really did it in a smart way, and I even looked to it when I found the time, because it was always on there, and they had stars, German stars also. Yeah, I think they put a lot of creativity in that, and they really, yeah, the result was really valuable for time now.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, let's talk about brands. What brands have you been, admiring over this time? Who's got it right from the perspective of engagement? And as Julie says, it's kind of a really good opportunity for brands to look at their purpose, to really dig down and think about, what their part in society really is. And it's a really good, I think, a good time to sort of reset those goals and objectives. We always think about, looking long term. And I think the difficulty is in a situation with the pandemic is that, it is very difficult to plan ahead. But, I still think there's the opportunity to look at the issues and to address them over a period. And I think what Roger said was really important, that, it's not just about selling, it's about, giving back and telling those great stories. So, any thoughts on brands that really stood out for you? Spero, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I suppose we look at it in context of the region that we live in.
Sure.
But I think that what happened in our case is that I suppose in Africa, brands have to have quite a big purpose because of the unjust living conditions that we're in, or the unequal.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found was happening during the COVID period is that the messages that were coming out were all exactly the same. So they weren't being differentiated from each other much, so they were all talking about the same thing. And there were one or two brands that just took a little bit a step aside and looked at it from a different perspective. And I think that was quite important, and it worked really, really well. The brand that I've been following quite a lot is a brand called Yeti, I love what they do on the content space. They're actually all about making outdoor coolers and drinks, and they only produce content, and they don't show their brand or the product in any of their shows. It's an unbelievable case study. It really is a fantastic one to showcase. I love what they do. I love how they do it. They create these beautiful stories. And you wouldn't think that they're an outdoor brand, They create these emotional, heartfelt stories. It's a wonderful, wonderful case study.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and even during the time of COVID, they didn't go into that space where, they were talking about all of us being in lockdown, and they just spoke about, they were consistent about telling great stories.
Yeah.
And I love that,
Yeah. So they didn't panic. They didn't, they really just took it all in and took a step back. I think that's really important. What about you, Roger? Have you witnessed any sort of really interesting brands, and what's kind of happening where you are? You need to. Oh, you're
Sorry.
That's okay.
Happens all the time. Yeah, I guess more than mentioning like a particular brand, I guess what really has been the difference, or is the brands that from beforehand have been thinking like media, as Julie was saying before, not thinking in the short term but in the long term, redefining the KPIs, thinking. I mean, the actual solution or the formula is for brands is to think like media, to be media.
Yeah.
And therefore, I guess the brands that before all this happening were already thinking in this way, it's been much more easier for them to do practically anything. I mean, all the media houses, Red Bull, General Electric, Johnson & Johnson, Marriott, and I think that's also like marking the path to where brands should go. Whereas there's COVID, the lockdowns or not, or normal world, if ever that happens again.
Sure. No, I get that. I mean, it's interesting. I was listening to a report today about Heathrow Airport, the CEO of, one of the biggest airports in the world. And, obviously their business is shot to pieces, 80% down year on year. But he said, we've got reserves that we can carry on for 2 years. If we don't have another passenger, we can keep going for 2 years. And I thought, well, that's forward planning, isn't it? And I think that, obviously it's quite an extreme example, but, you know, I think it's about, you know, being, you know, in a position where you can ride the storm out. You know, we've all worked through recessions. We've all worked through very difficult downturns. Obviously, this is unprecedented, as we've heard so many times. But I think, you know, brands that have that resilience and realize that they've just got to keep going. They've just got to understand that, you know, as you said earlier, adapt and change and go forward. I think that's really is the message. But, you know, still think about the creative element of that. What about you, Julia? What, obviously, apart from your own brands, what other brands have you been admiring over this period?
Many brands, but I have two brands in mind. One was Lego, who was present to the lockdown awards, because I think they really succeed to do two in one. It's one propose a project beyond the COVID time. So it was a smiling project, but also to have a social link between people, is to join what was impossible before, the parents and the children together, and give them a project to build together. The hashtag was build together, I think. And it was very totally aligned with their purpose of build the world in general, but the capacity, the capabilities of doing that and open a future world. So it was very, I think for me, it was the most important thing, because it wasn't just like a goodwill message or just a purpose like a bank or assurance. It was very concrete, because it fit totally of their native purpose, which is a building. So it was building a new world with building peace. So I think it was very
lots of different levels. Yeah.
So I bought some Lego to my son, so it was effective also. So
it worked, yeah.
I became a great expert now for Lego. And the other thing is something very specific, because I used to work in the beauty industry before, and I saw a little niche brand called Seasonally, which is a niche brand, green beauty brand. And what I really appreciate during this period was their capability of talking about economics, of people who were changing of mind about become an artist, become a new thing. So it was totally different of what they sell actually, but they were very agile and active about understanding their consumer. And for me, I have never seen this brand before. And just the fact and the capability of providing this kind of content to a brand, a beauty brand talking about economics, for me, it was the first time. And it was possible because it was just the fact to make understand that you can become an entrepreneurship, or you can be, in fact, everything was possible. And I love this approach, because I think it wasn't just to say you're getting more glow, or I don't know, with my product. It was just a mental beauty, in fact, and I really love this approach.
Excellent, very interesting. So that's what the brands have been doing, but you know, what about the emerging trends? You know, what have we seen? You know, how have those brands, how have they changed? What is, you know, the feeling? I mean, Spero, you talked about TikTok. You talked about how, you know, I mean, I've got kids and they spend pretty much all their time on TikTok. And, you know, but it's about, you know, how do brands sort of, you know, resonate within that area. So, you know, maybe I'll probably start with Margret. Tell me, you know, in your sort of world, what are the sort of emerging trends that you see?
Yes, I don't know if that's really, I don't know if that's a question, if that's connected to our pandemic situation right now, but however, what I think, or what I see, and I think it's very interesting. There are new web series to attract younger people to not really attractive careers,
Mm-hmm.
and there I think they make a great job there. So we do have the army, the Deutsche Bundeswehr. The army does that, and that's quite famous. And we have a web series from the chemical industry, which brings that content, but in a really fun way to young people. So they think about, well, why not working there? And now, which is brand new, and it goes through social media up and down because people don't really agree how the whole series works. That's a series to promote nursing professions, and I think it's satirical.
Yeah.
But I guess others think it's under the line. So it's a big thing right now in Germany. But however, I think that's a trend to make unattractive, let's say, jobs more interesting to younger people.
Yeah. I mean, from the legal perspective, has anything sort of changed in the pandemic period? Have you come across things that you haven't experienced before, or what's happening from that perspective?
Right. Let me think. I mean, laws haven't changed.
No.
And branded content. I mean, yes, we have new rules. So producer call us. How should we cope with all the regulations? We have deadlines here. Do we have to stick to the contract because nobody knew what's going to happen?
Yeah.
A lot of unemployment, we have special rules here in Germany. So we had a lot to do in the media industry to help those people.
Okay, interesting. And Roger, from your perspective, what have you seen emerging?
Well, I think we're in the middle of a very interesting crossroad that is represented by podcasting. Because podcasting is a trend by itself, with or without brands. And people is consuming more podcasts every day, and at the same time, in the creative / production part, making a podcast it's much more simpler than making audiovisual content.
Yeah.
If you want to tell a story just in audio, you can more or less produce it remotely or almost completely, rather than putting together a huge crew and making tests to everybody. So it's trendy and practical at the same time. So we're making right now we're producing 4 different podcasts, narrative podcasts, not conversational podcasts, which means they're like stories, like could be like a web series or TV series, and there's much briefings coming every day because brands are asking for them. So it's a very, very interesting and a huge trend, I guess, that we're living in.
Excellent. And Spero, obviously you mentioned TikTok before, but any other sort of trends that you can see that's been evolving over the last few months?
Yeah, it's interesting that of what Roger said, and so for me, the trend would be that the brands, a lot of them had to go onto the social media space, and they because that was where everybody was, but they still use the traditional media of interruption. And I think that the brands that have become very innovative are starting to create content that isn't interruptive. And as Roger said, they're creating podcasts. That's one of them. A few of the banks here have put up their own TV stations, and they're starting to broadcast about financial information directly to clients. And because they've got a tier of clients, there's different information that's relevant to different clients. And I think it also fits into one of the other panelists said that you become a media company. So those two trends for me are merging. Don't interrupt your consumer, but become a media, like a media owner or a media brand, and give the information that's relevant to your customer, but that gives them something in return. So they're watching your content, give them something in return, information or knowledge or whatever it is. And I think that's the trend for me.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's almost, every threat there's an opportunity. Brands can become utility in their approach, and that's a really interesting area. Julie, do you have anything to add in that respect?
Yes, I think one of the emerging things that I see is what I call the real life format. It's I think the time come to reassure people with a lot of live voice and not dreaming things. It's as if brands come down in the real life, just to talk through the one-to-one approach, the power of voice, the power of live. We have seen so many things with live on Instagram, on B2B approach also. It was very, very important. So it's yes, I think the trend is like the trust, the testimonials, and less than, because I think we were in a very important producing of intelligence artificial with many effects, and today I see that a lot of of program is not in the artificial world, but came back to a real and core world. And it's not UGC because it's not user generated content. It's more than that. It's just the connection between the brand and the community. For me, it's important, and this is maybe also you have a second trend for me. It's the micro influence work with the influencer. I have never seen since June big activation with many big YouTubers. I think people came not bigger. They choose nano community or micro community. They come back to a real world and not. This is what I have. The feeling.
Very interesting. Thank you. So we've got a few minutes left. So let's end with what we've learned from this challenging period. You know, and how has it positively, changed your business from the content creation perspective? So I'll start with Roger. What have you learned, Roger? You learned how to take yourself off mute.
That's exactly what I was just about to say. And I haven't learned that so far.
He hasn't learned that.
I already got a t-shirt and everything. You're on mute. No, I think one of the things more than learning is like we proved that our diversified model of having production company, agency, and studio has saved us about this crisis. And first we thought like it was like a kind of a luxury thing, like to be three things at the same time. But it has shown us that a content company has to be a little bit of a production company, a little bit of an agency, and a little bit of a studio. And when you have three doors in three different streets that lead to the same business, it's like the huge insurance that you can have right now. That's our biggest. More than learning is like a confirmation of something that we probably predicted 5 or 6 years ago.
Great. And what about you, Margret?
Yeah, well, what we have seen with our clients is obviously small production went much better. The huge productions, they really had a tough time in these last months. But with the smaller, it was easier to stick to the rules. So yeah, maybe that's a lesson learned for, I don't know, let's see.
Great. Spero, what about you?
I'm going to go back to, I suppose, the first subject matter that we discussed on our talk today about creativity. And I found that the smaller companies that are innovative, that are creative in executing their campaigns, and they become these challenger brands over these big brands that take ages to make decisions. And so I think it's forced the bigger brands to sort of decentralize their models and make quicker decisions so that they can compete, and that I found interesting. And of course, cutting through everything is that creativity, and creativity is not just about a good idea. It's about how you get your remote teams to work together, how do you approve an idea? How do you make a small ad because you've got the social distancing? And that again, I suppose, speaks to the creativity. And that for me has been where the winners have emerged from.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. And what about you, Julie?
I think I would have a sentence because I really feel that now content is definitely the new marketing. I think it was my learning. It's about, yes, Spero, you talk about creativity, but during this period, I think it proved the power of the content because it's agility. The way, if you are with a good process and the good tools, you see that now the creativity goes through content in reality. And it allows to provide many type of format, many type of things to do. So for me, it is just maybe the lockdown has opened a new marketing area, which is content marketing. In fact, the branded content, because it allows to the brand, yes, to think the creativity in other scope. And not just advertising, but just to be creative all the day, all the time, and in fact through the scope of content to go fastly on social media, to go on many things. I think it is my point.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think it's really pushed brands, I think, to take more risk. I think it's also brands are testing and learning as well. I think that's also come back into the fore. I think also, certainly for us as an organisation, we've become so much more connected globally through the whole pandemic, and actually that's been a really positive experience. Actually bringing us all together, because we're all experiencing the same thing pretty much across the world. So I kind of think it's uniting us in that way. It's making us more resilient. I think brands are becoming more experimental. It's pushing them to become more creative, which I think is a really good thing. So, I hope that we've given you and everyone who's listening a good feel, a good view of creativity around the BCMA world. I just want to end by thanking our panelists today. So Roger from Spain, Margret from Germany or DACH, Spero from South Africa, and Julie from France, who are all fantastic advocates of our BCMA family. So it just remains for me to say thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great event, and I hope you want to come and join us. So thank you and goodbye.